by miracle of sound. Alright, welcome back to the Shardbreaker podcast. We are doing our trailer for Alloy of Law, where I live read through the prologue. We'll ask some questions of Darkness and Mythic for what they think is going to happen in the coming book. You guys ready?
No.
No? You ready, Mythic?
Oh, yeah, Darkness, are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Just fucking up names, it's fine. All good. Alright, so our prologue. Wax crept along the ragged fence in a crouch, his boots scraping the dry ground. He held his Steryon 36 up by his head, the long silvery barrel dusted with red clay. The revolver was nothing fancy to look at, though the 6-shot cylinder was machined with such care in the steel alloy frame that there was no play in its movement. There was no gleam to the metal or exotic material on the grip, but it fit his hand like it was meant to be there. The waist-high fence was flimsy, the wood grayed with time, held together with fraying lengths of rope. It smelled of age. Even the worms had given up on this wood long ago. Wax peeked up over the knotted boards, scanning the empty town. Blue lines hovered in his vision, extending from his chest to points at nearby sources of metal, a result of his allomancy. Burning steel did that. It let him see the location of sources of metal, then push against them if he wanted. His weight against the weight of the item. If it was heavier, he was pushed back. If he was heavier, it was pushed forward. In this case, however, he didn't push. He just watched the lines to see if any of the metal was moving. None of it was. Nails holding together buildings, spent shell casings lying scattered in the dust, or horseshoes piled at the silent smithy. All were as motionless as the old hand pump planted in the ground to his right. Wary, he too remained still. Steel continued to burn comfortably in his stomach, and so, as a precaution, he gently pushed outward from himself in all directions. It was a trick he'd mastered a few years back. He didn't push on any specific metal objects, but created a kind of defensive bubble around himself. Any metal that came streaking in his direction would be thrown slightly off course. It was far from foolproof, he could still get hit, but shots would go wild, not striking where they were aimed. It had saved his life on a couple of occasions. He wasn't even certain how he did it. Allomancy was often an instinctive thing for him. Somehow he even managed to exempt the metal he carried, and didn't push his own gun from his hands. That done, he continued along the fence, still watching the metal lines to make sure nobody was sneaking up on him. Feldtrail had once been a prosperous town. That had been 20 years back. Then a clan of Kolos had taken up residence nearby. Things hadn't gone well. Today, the dead town seemed completely empty, though he knew it wasn't so. Wax had come here hunting a psychopath, and he wasn't the only one. He grabbed the top of the fence and hopped over, feet grinding red clay. Crouching low, he ran in a squat over to the side of the old blacksmith's forge. His clothing was terribly dusty, but well tailored. A fine suit, silver cravat at the neck, twinkling cufflinks on the sleeves of his fine white shirt. He had cultivated a look that appeared at a place, as if he were planning to tend a fine ball back in Elendel, rather than scrambling through a dead town in the roughs, hunting a murderer. Completing the ensemble, he wore a bowler hat on his head to keep off the sun. A sound. Someone stepped on a board across the street, making it creak. It was so faint, he almost missed it. Wax reacted immediately, flaring the steel that burned inside his stomach. He pushed on a group of nails in the wall beside him, just as the crack of a gunshot split the air. His sudden push caused the wall to rattle, the old rusty nails straining in their places. His push shoved him to the side, and he rolled across the ground. A blue line appeared for an eye blink, the bullet, which hit the ground where he had been a moment before. As he came up from his roll, a second shot followed. This one came close, but bent just a hair out of the way as it neared him. Deflected by his steel bubble, the bullet zipped past his ear. Another inch to the right and he'd have gotten it in the forehead, steel bubble or not. Breathing calmly, he raised his Steryon and sighted on the balcony of the Ode Hotel across the street, where the shot had come from. The balcony was fronted by the hotel's sign, capable of hiding a gunman. Wax fired, then pushed on the bullet, slamming it forward with extra thrust to make it faster and more penetrating. He wasn't using typical lead or copper-jacketed lead bullets. He needed something stronger. The large-caliber steel-jacketed bullet hit the balcony, and his extra power caused it to puncture the wood and hit the man behind. The blue line leading to the man's gun quivered as he fell. Wax stood up slowly, brushing the dust from his clothing. At that moment, another shot cracked in the air. He cursed, reflexively pushing against the nails again, though his instincts told him he'd be too late. By the time he heard a shot, it was too late for pushing to help. This time, he was thrown to the ground. That force had to go somewhere, and if the nails couldn't move, he had to. He grunted as he hit and raised his revolver, dust sticking to the sweat on his hand. He searched frantically for the one who'd fired at him. They'd missed. Perhaps the steel bubble had. A body rolled off the top of the blacksmith's shop and thumped down to the ground with a puff of red dust. Wax blinked and raised his gun to chest level and moved over behind the fence again, crouching down for cover. He kept an eye on the blue allomantic lines. They could warn him if someone got close, but only if the person was carrying or wearing metal. The body that had fallen beside the building didn't have a single line pointing to it. However, another set of quivering lines pointed to something moving along the back of the forge. Wax leveled his gun, taking aim as a figure ducked around the side of the building and ran towards him. The woman wore a white duster, reddened at the bottom. She kept her dark hair pulled back in a tail, wore trousers and a wide belt, with thick boots on her feet. She had a squarish face, a strong face, with lips that often rose slightly at the right side in a half-smile. Wax heaved a sigh of relief and lowered his gun. "Lessie." "You knock yourself to the ground again?" she asked, as she reached the cover of the fence beside him. "You've got more dust on your face than Miles has scowls. Maybe it's time for you to retire, old man." "Lessie, I'm 3 months older than you are." "Those are a long 3 months." She peeked up over the fence. "Seen anyone else?" "I dropped a man up on the balcony," Wax said. "I couldn't see if it was bloody Tan or not." "It wasn't," she said. "He wouldn't have tried to shoot you from so far away." Wax nodded. Tan liked things personal. Up close. The psychopath lamented when he had to use a gun. He rarely shot someone without being able to see the fear in their eyes. Lessie scanned the quiet town, then glanced at him, ready to move. Her eyes flickered downward for a moment, toward his shirt pocket. Wax followed her gaze. A letter was peeking out of his pocket, delivered earlier that day. It was from the grand city of Elendel, and was addressed to Lord Waxilium Ladrian, a name Wax hadn't used in years. A name that felt wrong to him now. He tucked the letter farther into his pocket. Lessie thought it implied more than it did. The city didn't hold anything for him now, and House Ladrian would get along without him. He really should have burned that letter. Wax nodded and toward the fallen man beside the wall, to distract her from the letter. "Your work?" "He had a bow," she said. "Stone arrowheads. Almost had you from above." "Thanks." She shrugged, eyes glittering in satisfaction. Those eyes now had lines at the sides of them, weathered by the rough's harsh sunlight. There had been a time when she and Wax had kept a tally of who had saved the other most often. They'd both lost track years ago. "Cover me," Wax said softly. "With what?" she asked. "Paint? Kisses? You're already covered with dust." Wax raised an eyebrow at her. "Sorry," she said, grimacing. "I've been playing cards too much with Wayne lately." He snorted and ran in a crouch to the fallen corpse and rolled it over. The man had been a cruel-faced fellow with several days of stubble on his cheeks. The bullet wound bled out to his right side. "I think I recognize him," Wax thought to himself, as he went through the man's pockets and came out with a drop of red glass, colored like blood. He hurried back to the fence. "Well?" Lessie asked. "Donnell's crew," Wax said, holding up the drop of glass. "Bastards," Lessie said. "They couldn't just leave us to it, could they?" "You did shoot his son, Lessie." "And you shot his brother." "Mine was self-defense." "Mine was too," she said. "That kid was annoying. Besides, he survived. Missing a toe." "You don't need 10, she said. "I have a cousin with 4. She does just fine." She raised her revolver, scanning the empty town. "Of course, she does look kind of ridiculous. Cover me." "With what?" She just grinned and ducked out from behind the cover, scrambling across the ground toward the smithy. "Harmony," Wax thought with a smile. "I love that woman." He watched for more gunmen, but Lessie reached the building without any further shots being fired. Wax nodded to her, then dashed across the street towards the hotel. He ducked inside, checking the corners for foes. The tap room was empty, so he took cover beside the doorway, waving toward Lessie. She ran down to the next building on her side of the street and checked it out. Donnell's crew. Yes, Wax had shot his brother. The man had been robbing a railway car at the time. From what he understood, though, Donnell hadn't even cared for his brother. No, the only thing that riled Donnell was losing money, which was probably why he was here. He put a price on Bloody Tan's head for stealing a shipment of his bendalloy. Donnell probably hadn't expected Wax to come hunting Tan the same day he did, but his men had standing orders to shoot Wax or Lessie if seen. Wax was half tempted to leave the dead town and let Donnell and Tan have at it. The thought of it made his eye twitch, though. He'd promised to bring Tan in. That was that. Lessie waved from the side of her building, then pointed toward the back. She was going to go out in that direction and creep along beside the next set of buildings. Wax nodded, then made a curt gesture. He'd tried to hook up with Wayne and Barl, who had gone to check the other side of the town. Lessie vanished, and Wax picked up his way through the old hotel towards a side door. He passed old, dirty nests made by both rats and men. The town picked up miscreants the way a dog picked up fleas. He even passed a place where it looked like some wayfarer had made a small fire pit on a sheet of metal with a ring of rocks. It was a wonder the fool hadn't burned the entire building to the ground. Wax eased open the side door and stepped into an alleyway between the hotel and the store beside it. The gunshots earlier would have been heard, and someone might come looking. Best to stay out of sight. Wax edged along the back of the store, stepping quietly across the red clay ground. The hillside here was overgrown with weeds except for the entrance to the old cold cellar. Wax wound around it, then paused, eyeing the wood-framed pit. Maybe... He knelt beside the opening, peering down. There had been a ladder here once, but it had rotted away. The remnants were visible below in a pile of old splinters. The air smelled musty and wet, with a hint of smoke. Someone had been burning a torch down there. Wax dropped a bullet into the hold and leaped in, gun out. As he fell, he filled his iron metal mind. decreasing his weight. He was a twin-born, a feruchemist as well as an allomancer. His allomantic power was steel pushing, and his feruchemical power was called skimming, and had the ability to grow heavier or lighter. It was a powerful combination of talents. He pushed against the round below him, slowing his fall so he landed softly. He returned his weight to normal, or well, normal for him. He often went about at 3/4 of his unadjusted weight, making himself lighter on his feet, quicker to react. He crept through the darkness. It had been a long, difficult road, finding where Bloody Tan was hiding. In the end, the fact that Feltrail had suddenly emptied of other bandits, wanderers, and unfortunates had been a major clue. Wax stepped softly, working his way deeper into the cellar. The scent of smoke was stronger here, and though the light was fading, he made out a fire pit beside the earthen wall. That and a ladder that could be moved into place at the entrance. That gave him pause. It indicated that whoever was making their hideout in the cellar, it could be Tan or it could be someone else entirely, was still down here. Unless there was another way out. Wax crept forward a little farther, squinting in the dark. There was a light ahead. Wax cocked his gun softly, then drew a little vial out of his mist coat and pulled the cork with his teeth. He downed the whiskey and steel in one shot, restoring his reserves. He flared his steel. Yes, there was metal ahead of him, down the tunnel. How long was the cellar? He'd assumed it would be small, but the reinforcing wood timbers indicated something deeper, longer, more like a mine. He crept forward, focusing on those metal lines. Someone would have to aim a gun if they saw him. The metal would quiver, giving him a chance to push the weapon out of their hands. Nothing moved. He slid forward, smelling musty, damp soil, fungus, potatoes left to bud. He approached a trembling light, but could hear nothing. The metal lines did not move. Finally, he got close enough to make out a lamp hanging by a hook on a wooden beam near the wall. Something else hung at the center of the tunnel. A body? Hanged? Wax cursed softly and hurried forwards, wary of a trap. It was a corpse, but it left him baffled. At first glance, it seemed years old. Those eyes were gone from the skull, the skin pulled back against the bone. It didn't stink and wasn't bloated. He thought he recognized it. Jorman, the coachman who brought mail into Weathering from the more distant villages around the area. That was his uniform, at least, and it seemed like his hair. He'd been one of Tan's first victims, the disappearance that sent Wax hunting. They had only been 2 months back. He's been mummified, Wax thought, prepared and dried like leather. He felt revolted. He'd gone drinking with Jorman on occasion, and thought the man cheated at cards. He'd been an amiable enough fellow. The hanging wasn't an ordinary one either. Wires had been used to prop up Jorman's arms so they were out to the sides, his head cocked, his mouth pried open. Wax turned away from the gruesome sight, his eye twitching. Careful, he told himself. Don't let him anger you. Keep focused. He would be back to cut Jorman down. Right now, he couldn't afford to make the noise. At least he knew he was on the right track. This was certainly Bloody Tan's lair. There was another patch of light in the distance. How long was this tunnel? He approached the pool of light, and here found another corpse. This one hung on the wall sideways. Anorel, a visiting geologist who had vanished soon after Jorman. Poor woman. She'd been dried in the same manner, body spiked to the wall in a very specific pose, as if she were on her knees inspecting a pile of rocks. Another pool of light drew him onward. Clearly this wasn't a cellar. It was probably some kind of smuggling tunnel left over from the days when Feltrail had been a booming town. Tan hadn't built this, not with those aged wooden supports. Wax passed another 6 corpses, each lined by its own glowing lantern, each arranged in some kind of pose. One sat in a chair, another strung up as if flying, a few stuck to the wall. The later ones were more fresh. Last one recently killed. Wax didn't recognize the slender man who hung with his hand to his head in a salute. Rust and ruin, Wax thought. This isn't Bloody Tan's lair. It's his gallery. Sickened, Wax made his way to the next pool of light. This one was different, brighter. As he approached, he realized he was seeing sunlight streaming down from a square cut in the ceiling. The tunnel led up to it, probably a former trap door that had rotted or broken away. The ground sloped in a gradual slant up to the hole. Wax crawled up the slope, then cautiously poked his head out. He'd come up in a building, though the roof was gone. The brick walls were mostly intact, and there were 4 altars in the front, just a Wax left. An old chapel to the survivor. It seemed empty. Wax crawled out of the hole, Hysterion at his side of his head, coat marred by dirt from below. The clean, dry air smelled good to him. Each life is a performance, a voice said, echoing in the ruined church. Wax immediately ducked to the side, rolling up to an altar. But we are not the performers, the voice continued. We are the puppets. Tan, Wax said, come out. I have seen God, lawkeeper, Tan whispered. Where was he? I have seen death himself, with the nails in his eyes. I have seen the survivor, who is life. Wax scanned the small chapel. It was cluttered with broken benches and fallen statues. He rounded the side of the altar, judging the sound to come from the back of the room. Other men wonder, Tan's voice said, but I know. I know I'm a puppet. We all are. Did you like my show? I worked so hard to build it. Wax continued along the building's right wall, his boots leaving a trail in the dust. He breathed shallowly, a line of sweat creeping down his right temple. His eye was twitching. He saw corpses on the walls in his mind's eye. Many men never get the chance to create true art, Tan said, and the best performances are those which can never be reproduced. Months, years spent preparing, everything placed right, but at the end of the day, the rotting will begin. I couldn't truly mummify them. I hadn't the time or resources. I could only preserve them long enough to prepare for this one show. Tomorrow it will be ruined. You were the only one to see it. Only you. I figure we're all just puppets, you see. The voice was coming from the back of the room, near some rubble that was blocking Wax's view. Someone else moves us, Tan said. Wax ducked around the side of the rubble, raising his Starion. Tan stood there, holding Lessie in front of him, her mouth gagged, her eyes wide. Wax froze in place, gun raised. Lessie was bleeding from her leg and her arm. She'd been shot, and her face was growing pale. She'd lost blood. That was how Tan had been able to overpower her. Wax grew still. He didn't feel anxiety. He couldn't afford to. It might make him shake, and shaking might make him miss. He could see Tan's face behind Lessie. The man held a garrote around her neck. Tan was a slender, five-fingered man. He'd been a mortician. Black hair, thinning, worn greased back. A nice suit that now shone with blood. Someone else moves us, lawman, Tan said softly. Lessie met Wax's eyes. They both knew what to do in this situation. Last time, he'd been the one captured. People always tried to use them against each other. In Lessie's opinion, that wasn't a disadvantage. She'd have explained that if Tan hadn't known the two of them were a couple, he'd have killed her right off. Instead, he'd kidnapped her. That gave them a chance to get out. Wax sighted down the barrel of his Starion. He drew in the trigger until he balanced the weight of the seer right on the edge of firing. And Lessie blinked. 1, 2, 3. Wax fired. In the same instant, Tan yanked Lessie to the right. The shot broke the air, echoing against clay bricks. Lessie's head jerked back as Wax's bullet took her just above the right eye. Blood sprayed against the clay wall beside her. She crumpled. Wax stood frozen, horrified. No, that isn't the way. It can't. The best performances, Tan said, smiling and looking down at Lessie's figure, are those that can only be performed once. Wax shot him in the head. That is the prologue. So yeah, what are your first impressions of Wax?
I don't know. I like the other guy more.
Bloody Tan?
Yeah.
Well, Bloody Tan is dead now. And so is Lessie.
I like him more, though. He should have been the main protagonist of this book.
What do you think, Darkness, of Wax?
He's alright so far.
So we get his full name, which is Waxilium Ladrian, which means he is a descendant of Breeze, likely a Breeze in Alrian. And so, what did you first think about this steel bubble that he was able to create around himself?
Kind of cool. Very effective in a world of guns.
Mm-hmm.
There was another power that they had, right?
Where we're gonna get to that.
Yeah. No, where they can detect like books we read before. Where they can detect I don't know if it was like metal in general.
So both steel and iron let you see those blue lines that he gets to see metal.
No, not that. Oh my god, I was talking about. I just remembered. It was it copper? I don't know. It was one of the ones that helped you cover allomantic use.
Copper allowed you to cover it. They called it copper clouds, and then the opposite of copper, I think it's bronze, lets you find people that are using allomancy.
Right. It's interesting how like it's sort of like a AoE type of feeling, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I didn't think that steel would be able to be used that way, but clearly they're advancing.
Mm-hmm. Also, what did you think about Wax being able to steel push to boost his bullets?
That's cool. I figured they would do that.
What did you think, Mythic, about the steel pushing the bullets?
Oh no.
Metal. Bolts are made out of metal, so.
Mm-hmm.
I found it interesting that they had different types of bullets for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then also, what do you think about twinborns? So Wax is a twinborn, meaning he has one allomantic and one ferrochemical power.
Before.
Did you?
Yeah, when we were in the first book, and I was like, "What happens if like ferrochemius and had a child?" And you were like, "I don't know what happens."
Well, I think you had talked about potentially being because we've never seen someone who has just one ferrochemical power. You either had all or none. So in this world now, it seems like in the future, I guess they've, obviously...
One of one.
Yeah, they've obviously bred with the Terrace people like humans have. And so now not just Terrace people have ferrochemical abilities, but they also are now kind of like, I don't know the right word, what's the word? Diluted down so that you can have just one of them instead of all of them, like how there was Mistings and Mistborn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you can either be a twinborn and have one of each, or I guess you can probably also have like only one of either. Do you think?
Can you imagine
a Mistborn that has ferrochemy at the same time?
What were you gonna say, Darkness?
Can you imagine how the first person whose like fairy chemi powers were limited felt like?
They're like, why can't I do the others?
No, but like, imagine it's just that one you can't do.
So how it was with the Allomancy was you either had all, none, or one, and that's the same with Ferrochemy. You don't just you can't just have
Was
like
that
four of them
okay?
to
But was
something.
that when it first started diluting, where it just literally took all of them away except one, or did it start counting down?
No, it's always been one, all, or none.
Okay.
So that would be the same with the Ferrochemists, is it's all, one, or none ferrochemical powers. But yeah, what do you think though about like being able to be a twin-born? Because there's like so many combinations you can have, and like so many different ways that you can use these like combination abilities.
I'm just waiting for the twinborn that shows up that has abilities that'll make them the next whatever. I can't remember the dude's name.
Lord Ruler.
Yeah, that's it. The next Lord Ruler.
Mhm. Do you guys think there are still full Mistborns and Ferrochemists, or do you think they're all going to be just like one of each or something now?
Diluted? No, I still think they were both somewhere in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, what do you think about the fact that Koloss apparently still exist?
I mean, not a shock.
Sazed
Just
apparently
kind of
didn't
shocking that they're.
Sazed didn't kill off all the Koloss apparently.
I mean, they have sentience. Why would you kill them off? They can learn, be,
Well, apparently they
members of
took down a whole
society.
village at one point.
Yeah,
So they're
well,
apparently not very nice still.
I mean, years of being mean, I guess.
Also, what did you think of our new swears? So we used to get by the Lord Ruler as our swears. Now we have Wax swearing by Harmony as well as by Rust and Ruin.
Is that just like God and the devil at that point?
What do you think, Mythic, about the new curses we get?
They're kind of neat. Gives me hope for some theories later on.
Also, what did you think about their mention of Tan's mention of death and death having nails in his eyes?
It's one of those people again. Woo, yay.
What happened to that one dude?
Marsh?
Yeah,
We don't know what happened to Marsh.
that's him.
Yeah.
You think
You
that's
think it's
Marsh?
Marsh?
Marsh's death?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I mean, as far as we know, he was the only Inquisitor left alive by the end of the book.
as
But
far
that
as we know.
I'm pretty sure we got confirmation he was the only Inquisitor left, but that doesn't mean they couldn't have made new Inquisitors.
Yeah. Marsh could make more Inquisitors.
Also, what do you think about the Survivor religion still being around?
That's kind of cool, too.
About people still praying to Kelsier?
I mean,
Oh, I mean, he is a god, so.
what is it? He's hope.
Yeah, that's what he
That's
called
the other guy.
himself. It's Hope.
No, that's the other guy.
No, that's Harmony's
What
the
other
other guy.
guy?
No, that's the other guy. Kelsier's just Kelsier.
Okay. Also, what do you think about Bloody Tan stating that someone else moves them and they're all puppets?
He's not a quack. He's a cool guy. They should listen to him more. He's obviously the protagonist of this story, even though he died.
It's actually the prologue's actually a flash forward, obviously. Everything else is just it leading up to that.
Yeah.
What did you think, Darkness, about Bloody Tan saying that someone else moves them?
Well, then it's not his. Like, he wasn't the leader of that or whatever, you know?
Hmm.
Like, he wasn't the one that thought of that.
And then what do you think about us starting the book with Wax shooting his girlfriend or wife or whatever they were? They were apparently in love. He's just killed her.
That's valid. Respect, honestly.
What do you think, Mythic?
What was the question, real quick?
What did you think about us starting the book with Wax shooting his girlfriend or wife, or we don't really get a confirmation of it, his lover Lessie?
I don't know. It seems a little
Didn't-
odd if they're lovers.
Didn't it specify how like deep into it they were, huh?
Yeah, he just states at one point that he loves her, and she says that they obviously kiss a lot. So, but he doesn't specifically say if she was his girlfriend or his wife.
That's wow. He just shot her. Like,
Yup.
that's great.
He was very upset by that. That's a great way to start the book.
I wonder how he treats his friends.
Yeah, so after this little prologue, what do you think is going to be the main plot of this book? Where do you think this book's going to go?
Well, obviously they're gonna try to find who was behind it, you know,
Hmm.
because he was like, "I'm not the one that orchestrated this" or whatever. Well, oh, that's what I believe, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And also, he's gonna fall in love with death, right?
So you think it's going to be like they're going to learn of some like big conspiracy or something behind that like Bloody Town was like a part of or something, and that's gonna go into some bigger mystery and everything.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mythic? Where's this book gonna go?
It's gonna be a murder mystery book.
Then, before we end the prologue, I wanted to show you 2 maps that we get right at the start of the book. So first of all, we get a map of like the bigger area. It's called the Ellendale Basin. So this is where we've got like this big basin, and then we have the roughs outside of it. That's what our current area looks like in Mistborn Era 2. So Wax was saying he was in Feltrell, so that's like one of the farthest west towns in the roughs that we can see. We get told that Ellendale is the capital, which is obviously named after Elend.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What do you think about our how our new area looks?
Interesting.
What do you think, Darkness?
I was just looking through all of it. Where the this is like completely different from how it used to be, huh?
Yeah, it is very, very different.
That's not good.
You don't think it's good?
Not for me.
Yeah,
Now I'm gonna need those.
Again.
I'm gonna need those ash mounts to come back.
Yeah, no ash mounts apparently, but there is like a big range of mountains separating the Ellendale Basin from the roughs.
Are those all rivers?
There's rivers, and I think there's also railway lines with the lines
they
with the
got
circles.
trains.
Yeah, because Wax mentions that Leslie shot or he shot the one guy's brother while on like a train heist.
Fun.
Yeah, so there's some rivers, and there's also a bunch of railway lines that seem to mainly follow the rivers and go to a bunch of different towns. They all connect to Ellendale, the capital. Then we get one more map, which is a map of the city of Ellendale. And there are notes.
Oh, great.
So this is made in the year 341.
Jesus Christ.
It's been 341 years since Mistborn Era 1 ended. There's a little note at the bottom from Naz saying, "My friend annotated with locations as per your instructions." So Naz is obviously here, probably with Chris, or at least he's doing stuff for Chris here. And so the Field of Rebirth, which is in the center, that's where that's where Vin and Ellen's bodies were, in the Field of Merewell Flowers. So that's where everyone kind of spawned in, basically, when Sazdri made the world.
Tekiel, Tara, and Set mentioned. Why does that sound familiar?
Because those are names we've heard of before.
Oh yeah, look, there's the whatever thingy. Yeah.
Yep. So Tekiel was a noble house back in the day. I believe it was one of Ellen's friends was a Tekiel.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got Tekiel. So Set Mansion. So Set was obviously Alrian's dad.
Yeah.
And then we also have Yeoman Manor, which Yeoman was the fucking obligator who locked up Vin, the 3rd book, and was a ATM misting. And then we can see Ladrine Mansion, which is obviously where Wax's home probably is, and where Breeze probably lived. So yeah, we got all these little references.
Ah, I see. There's a lot more that I don't even see because I'm blind.
Yeah, there's also Hamindar Bay, which is probably named after Ham, who I believe died in the 2nd book.
What happened to Ham?
I believe he dies in the Siege of Luthadel when the Colas come to attack.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, so he got a whole bay named after him.
Made out of his own blood after his head got ripped off.
Yeah, so those are our little. Yeah, and then they have Demo Promenade down there by Set Manor. Missed that one. Demo gets a whole promenade named after him. We know that Demo lived. He's off on fucking Roshar doing stuff.
So
yeah, those are our maps. So next week we will be doing our first episode of Alloy of Law, and we will be doing chapters 1 through 3. 3 chapters. Look forward to that, and yeah, thank you guys all so much for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next week for our first episode of Alloy of Law. Bye!
Bye.
Bye.